Finding the perfect desk. Yeah, easier said than done. Too big, too small, not enough storage, or just plain boring. Trust me, I've spent countless hours scrolling through websites, wandering store aisles, and still coming up empty-handed. It's frustrating when nothing quite fits your space, your style, or what you really need to make it your own. And that's when it hit me. Maybe the solution isn't out there. Maybe it's something I have to create myself. Why settle for a cookie-cutter design when you can build something that's not just functional, but personal? Something that works exactly how you want it to. So I rolled up my sleeves, grabbed some tools, and decided to make it happen. Quick disclaimer, I obviously already have my desk, so me going out and buying all the supplies again to build another one isn't really in the budget. But what I will do is I have a lot of pictures from the first time that I made the desk, and I'll kind of walk you through step by step what I did. Things that I ran into, problems that arose, that kind of thing. So that way I can help you prevent any mistakes that I made when you go ahead and make your own desk. All right, so getting right into it, we're going to go over some of the stuff that I bought in order to complete the project. Obviously, first, we have the actual door that I got. Now, this one is a 30 by 80. I believe the one that I actually got when I made my desk, I want to say it was a 32 or a 36. But that was one of the main reasons that I ended up going with a door in the first place, was because I needed something that was a lot deeper. And I'll show you here in a second, like, I set my desk up a lot of different ways, but I have a lot of stuff. I have an ultra wide monitor. I needed the extra space. I did have my printer on my desk at one point, and then we moved, and now it's over here on this other desk behind me. But even still, like, I use up a good amount of the desk right now. So I'm definitely glad. That was one of the big selling points for me, is especially not only like the deepness of it, but the length of it. It's really hard to find a desk that is above like 60 inches. When you do find a desk that is above 60 inches, it tends to be a lot more money. And I don't really know why, but that's just kind of how it is. But yeah, so I ended up going with, I want to say it was a 32 or a 36 inch wide desk, but it is 80 inches long. Now, I did build this about almost 4 years ago now. And the price back then was below $100. So these prices are going to be a little bit different than what they were compared to when I actually made this desk. Now, the next thing I got was the glaze coat. Now, you can do whatever kind of epoxy resin coating you want. This was just in the store, and when I got the actual door, I just grabbed this on the way out. It was just easier to just grab it. Once again, I want to say it was probably around this price, maybe a little bit cheaper, but it's a quart total, and I want to say we didn't even use all of it, where my name is routed into the desk and the coating itself. Now, for the name, what I did is I went to, it was like a craft store, and got basically this stuff right here, which is just color dye for resin. It was really cheap. You can get it on Amazon, obviously, here for $10. I mixed it separately for my name and then the actual coating on the top. This is the router I used. Yeah, I already had one. So they have ones that are $300, $400. You don't really need any of that, because really all I did with this was actually use it to make my name in the desk. And then I used a rounded edge bit to give the actual edge of the desk a little bit of a lip, so it wasn't just like a straight 90 degree. But yeah, you don't really need anything too expensive in that sense for that. This is just an example, like bit kit. So this first bit here on the corner here, a rounded bit like that is what's going to give you that lip. And I'll put a picture up and I'll show you. That is what's going to give you that little lip on the edge of the desk. Is it really necessary? Not really. Now for the next part, so I have pipe in here, and I'll tell you why. So when I first made this desk, I actually went with these legs from Amazon. They're pretty cheap, $40 for a set of 4. I think I bought a set of 6, one for each corner, and then I put 2 in like the middle, like offset equal distance from the middle, in the back of the desk to help support some of the weight. And what I found out is I move my desk way too much. And what happens is with these legs, it's a welded piece on the inside of the leg, but on the top of the leg here, it's a welded piece, and it's just a very, very thin piece of metal with the actual like the nut welded to it. Now what happens is because it's so thin, the smallest amount of like moving your desk, you know, like trying to pick it up, vacuum behind it, that kind of thing, it bends that metal super, super easily. So when you tighten this down, it can be as tight as you can make it, but it's gonna move because it's not actually flush to the flange that is mounted to the desk. It was okay, and I think like realistically, if we didn't move, like I've moved my desk to different rooms probably 3 or 4 times in the span of one house, and then we moved it to this house. If I didn't move my desk as much, it probably would have been fine. But the problem was like I said, I just kept moving my desk, and it just made it worse and worse and worse. And it was not stable at all. And with kids and dogs, I really didn't want this thing falling on anybody. So what I ended up doing is I got some 3/4 inch pipe. Now it depends, like if you were to go with the desk or with the door, I just have it set up to where it's put pictures of it, but mounting point on each corner, and then all those come down, and then it comes into a T, and then it mounts with a crossbar, a cross pipe that comes through the bottom. I haven't had any problems with it. It's very stable. I wish I would have did this the first time, but we also have a buddy of mine. What we did with his desk is we pretty much did the same thing. But for the legs on his, we actually used 4x4s, and we just mounted them to the desk that way. And in my opinion, like cost effective wise, it's a lot cheaper than going with, you know, actual metal pipe. His desk is insanely heavy now, and while you can obviously take the legs off the desk, it's a little bit more of a pain than just unthreading. Those are a few different options you can use. It's really up to you. I'll put pictures of his desk legs as well, just to kind of show you what I'm talking about here. Obviously a sander, you're gonna need a sander of some kind. This is just a cheap one. It doesn't have to be crazy. Just some real low grit sandpaper to tear up the resin once you pour, because after you actually get the design routed out on the desk that you want, you're gonna pour your resin. You're obviously not, it's not gonna pour completely flush, so you're gonna have to sand it down a little bit to level it out. And then, ever worked with like epoxy before, a good way to get all the bubbles out of it is to just hit it with a torch right after you lay it. So what we did is, when we were actually pouring in the design, would pour a little bit, hit it with a torch, pour again, hit it with a torch, and then do it basically in layers. Now, it also depends on what kind of epoxy you use. Some are meant for deep pours, which is, you know, 1 inch, whatever it may be, depth wise, because some epoxies won't cure fully if you try to do a deep pour all at once. With the actual epoxy that we used, I didn't seem to have a problem with it. I don't know for a fact now. At the time I didn't know, but I don't really know if this is meant for deep pours like that. Now, mind you, the pour may have been maybe 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch. It wasn't very deep. So I really don't think you'll have much of an issue with whatever kind of epoxy you use. But that is just something to keep in mind depending on how you want to do it. I mean, that was pretty much all I got. Now, when it came to stuff that was under the desk, one of the big things was trying to find a desk that kind of met all of my needs. And at the time, with what I wanted, I was looking at spending, you know, $300, $400, $500, $600 on a desk. And it was like everyone I found, some met what I needed. You know, it was really hard to find like everything that I wanted. What I also did was I added some just regular cable management trays underneath. This is pretty much what it was. It's just, you know, really basic, run screws in, and then the same thing with like a power supply. I used a mountable power supply that I just screwed to the bottom of the desk so I could keep everything contained down there. And I mean, it worked out pretty well. I'll put pictures in as well. And I really didn't run into too many issues with that specifically. So when you go to make your design, what we used was Photoshop, and then just kind of experimented with different fonts and then whatever kind of logos we wanted. I ended up going with the BattleNet logo and the Steam logo. What we did was we printed them out on regular old printer paper and then just used painter's tape and taped it down around all the edges. With the router bit, we just kind of traced it out onto the desk. I'm sure there's probably a better way to do this, but it seemed to work the best for the situation. I didn't really run into too many issues other than kind of the paper tearing up every now and again, but it wasn't something that caused any problems. I mean, that's what we did, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'll have pictures up. One thing to keep in mind, whenever you do your first pour, whatever design you're putting in your desk, when you sand that down, now because this is a door and it's not actually solid wood, what it is it's made out of MDF in itself, like a filling of MDF. And then on the top, it's like a wood veneer. So it's just like a thin layer of like fake wood, pretty much. Now what happens is there's actually a layer in between your veneer and then your MDF, like composite. It's basically like it almost looks like a cardboard kind of. So when you go ahead and do your design and then sand the excess resin off, be careful because you can go through that veneer very, very easily. When I was sanding it, I did go through it. When I went through it, I just went ahead and I actually just kind of did a whole section around my design and where my name was, just to kind of give it some contrast from the rest of the desk. And I like it, but that is something to keep in mind when you do sand it, because it is very easy to go through. And then with your top pour, when you actually do your final coat on top, what we did is we actually sat it up on some, like another table, and then we had a whole bunch of paper that we put down underneath the top desk to obviously prevent the resin from getting on anything else. But what we didn't account for is drips. So whenever you pour and it starts to go over the edge and drip down, we didn't pay attention to that. And I'll put pictures of what I'm talking about. But when you pour, make sure after about 15 minutes to an hour, give or take, just come back and look underneath the edges of your desktop, and you're going to see little droplets, and you're just going to want to go through with a scraper and just kind of take them off. And eventually, like, they'll stop, forming droplets down there. The resin will start to harden. But that is one thing to look out for too, because my desk has these little ridges now all around the edges, and it kind of drives me insane. So yeah, I'll show you a picture of what it looked like the last day when the resin was finally cured, the top layer, and then obviously when we started putting everything on the bottom side and all that. And then I'll show you a picture of what it looks like fully set up with all my stuff on it. And yeah, I mean, well, that's pretty much it. I hope this little walkthrough kind of gave you the inspiration and confidence to take on your own desk project. I think it's really cool how a space that you create yourself can impact your productivity and creativity. If you have any more questions, or if you'd like to share a build that you made, feel free to drop a comment. I'd really like to hear about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future projects. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.